here too. All of these recordings that I make, I put up on YouTube. And partly that's so Brandon expressed an interest in wanting to watch them. And so I put them up there for him. But I put them up there for anybody that you miss a week and you want to watch the session that you missed. Some people, like commitments, like they can be here, but they can't be at my Wednesday night class, or vice versa, and they want to be able to watch what they weren't able to. That's just great. So I think I'm gonna work on like an easy way to like write it up on the board, but I think for now, like if you want to kind of see my playlist, they call it on YouTube, where like all my videos are, it's a playlist. I don't know. Please just come find me, and then I'll like email you the link to that. So if you want those, just let me know. I'll work on like an easy to put link where I can just write it up on the board. But for now, just let me know, and that is totally okay. Anybody can watch them. I think prayer for what the Lord might do. This came totally out of the blue this last week. One of my coworkers, who is not at all a believer, came up to me and said, "So, I had a personal question for you. Where do you go to church again?" I was like, "Portland First Church of the Nazarene." He's like, "Okay, all right. Now, it's not really my thing. I don't really agree or believe any of that, but I'd really like to come sometime and watch you teach." It's just, I don't necessarily like believe it, but I really would like to see that sometime. I was like, "Great, whenever you want to, Chris, just come on and just let me know and we'll work that out." So sometime for a Wednesday night, he might come. So I'm going to be praying that he does. So who knows how these sessions out there on the internet might impact someone. Who knows? Hosea. Let's talk about Hosea. Very, I think just as a way to preface this, a very different book than Amos. I think if we look at the prophets in a very simplistic, oversimplified way, it just seems like judgment, 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 judgment. And it's just, but there's actually way more to it. Because God approaches all of his prophets from a really different place. And I hope that comes out. Let me just kind of start. This is the word of the Lord, which was revealed to Hosea, son of Beeri, during the time when Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah ruled Judah, and during the time when Jeroboam, son of Joash, ruled Israel. So, interesting stuff. His ministry lasted a long time, about 45 years, we think. Okay? Now, this is a lot of so these kings are all from Judah, and then the one king of Israel, which we know, Jeroboam II, he was the most prosperous king, and he ruled a long time. And Hosea is the last prophet to Israel that we will study. After this, there will be no more prophets to Israel because Israel gets conquered. Okay? So this is the last prophet to Israel that we will study. And then all the other prophets will be to the southern kingdom of Judah, and that's where Jerusalem is. Okay? So he mentioned a lot of kings, but see, all these kings were kings of Israel too. And he only mentioned Jeroboam, but he's going to be a prophet while all these kings are king. As you can see, a lot of them didn't last very long. A lot of assassination there. There's two possibilities there as to why they weren't mentioned. One, Hosea considered them insignificant. He was only mentioning the kings that he thought were major. So Jeroboam was a major king, those other kings weren't. Or Hosea didn't consider them legitimate. So he mentioned Jeroboam just as a reference point, but we know that Judah is the only nation that God is kind of with at the moment, and Israel he's very much not. They're not in favor. And so he didn't even consider those kings legitimate, and so he didn't mention them. We don't know which it is, but those are two possibilities. This time period, as we recall, with Amos, it's very it's very similar to Amos in that this is just great prosperity for Israel and Judah. Financially, politically, they're in a really great spot. Okay? But when Hosea ends, Israel gets conquered. If we remember from Amos, Amos prophesied that Israel would be conquered at its peak. It wouldn't go through the slow period of decline. A much greater power would come and just wipe it out. Okay? So the beginning of Hosea, we're here, and at the end of the Hosea, we're conquered. Okay? By the end of it. And Judah is kind of living... Judah doesn't get conquered, but they're not powerful either, because Assyria is way more powerful than them, but they just decided not to attack them. So we're almost identical in background to Amos. So if you could think about the kind of people and the kind of themes that Amos was echoing, still a problem here. Okay, so all the things that they were saying that Israel was doing wrong, and the oppression and the exploiting poor people and in love with wealth and not caring about anything that the Lord does, still a thing. Still a thing. We're in that same exact time period. Okay? Hosea, you would call him the Jeremiah of Israel, because in the same way that Jeremiah witnesses very vividly, in fact, the destruction of Jerusalem and Judah, so too does Hosea for Israel. Okay? This is not a situation where, remember, Amos was like living in Judah, but he was like prophesying in Israel. Hosea is actually in Israel. Like, he's there. Okay, so he's on location, you might say. Fun fact, the text of Hosea contains the highest proportion of textual problems of any Old Testament book except maybe Job. A high degree of corruption of the texts. Okay, so the text is very corrupted. There's a lot of problems. So because of that, the scholars I read, they would actually urge us to consider the current translation of Hosea as temporary. For some of you, that's a very threatening statement. You shouldn't be. There are several words. Right now, there is our scholars, I say our, in the Christian community, we have scholars that are trying to put extra emphasis on Hosea and reconstruct the text to bring a lot more clarity. So it could be, the translations you have of Hosea now are probably not going to be the case, but could it be that somewhere down the road our kids are reading like a translation of Hosea that's slightly different with some different words? Could be. Possible. I don't think that would change the overall meaning. I think the meaning is still going to be the same. The themes are going to be the same. I don't think this teaching is invalid, but there could be some different words here and there. Okay? And that's us. That's not bad. That's us looking at the translations we have and saying these have problems, and rather than just pretending like those problems don't exist, we're going to do the best scholarship we can to get the most accurate rendering of Scripture that we can. Okay? Fun facts that you may not have known. The main themes, sin, judgment, salvation, God's loyal love. Which you might be looking at that and be like, well, Nate, that looks real similar to Amos. It does, doesn't it? Like, there are a lot of similarities here, but then there's just some really key differences that I think are going to hit you really early on. So, how about we start with now? When the Lord first spoke through Hosea, he said to him, okay, so first, this is what God said to Hosea first, right after his commissioning. So this isn't like, I've been walking with the Lord and I have this relationship with him for a long time and then he asks me this. This is, all right, you're going to be my prophet. Okay, Lord, let me give you your first task. First task. Great, I'm going to be a prophet. This is going to be great. All right, it's going to be a little challenging, but all the prophets are. It's going to be all right. All right, first task. The Lord first spoke through Hosea. He said to him, go marry a prostitute who will bear illegitimate children conceived through prostitution, because the nation continually commits spiritual prostitution by turning away from the Lord. And immediately, we know that we're in a different land than Amos. And And I'm going to be honest with you guys, like I did this entire lesson and I was going over it and I just wasn't feeling it. And I did this and I wrote this and I was just like, why is this just not grabbing me? Like normally it just really does. And I realized that I was reading this through the lens of Amos. Okay, so Amos, what is God's primary emotion in Amos? If you were to boil it down to an emotion, what is God expressing towards Israel in Amos? Anger, judgment, fury. Like God's furious. It's just this righteous fury that just burns through Amos.
It's like he's worn down from the continual disobedience. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And here, and so I made my whole lecture, and I was just like, why am I not feeling it? And that was when God showed me, you're reading the text wrong, because this isn't righteous fury. This is the anger that comes from a broken heart. This is anger that comes when a heart's been ripped out and crushed. This is, and it's a heck of a first assignment. I mean, think of the implications. Think of, for Hosea, God is saying, I want you to go find a woman and fall in love with her, get married, live with her, and she's going to become a prostitute, and you're going to continue living with her, and she's going to start having children with you, possibly some through other men, and you're going to continue to live with her, and you're going to feel what that feels like. So then how would that feel for Hosea?
Really?
Give words to it. Like, how would that feel for Hosea going through this process?
I'm supposed to be a prophet and look at my home life and everything's askew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is not the home life that prophets are supposed to have.
Are people really going to think I'm a prophet when I'm marrying a prostitute? And
Right.
I'm speaking in judgment of Israel and God's people. And are they really going to believe my?
Everyone's going to know who my wife is.
So they're going to question his.
Maybe they will
His
not.
thinking.
They will not. Yeah, exactly. What was he thinking? Why would, like? Is he just stupid? Is he just one of those guys that's just totally submissive and he's just letting this happen? How about the children? What would their emotions be?
I don't think I'd want to be named for.
Hold off.
Oh.
Wait for it. We will get there. We will get there. Spoilers. But just without even knowing that, like.
A lot of emotional upheaval in that household, no doubt.
Who is my dad really?
Where's mom?
Where's mom?
This time, Dad.
How come mom's hanging out with all these other guys?
Mm-hmm. Or people coming up to the kids and telling them.
You look like the protocol just.
Whoa.
Dysfunction, extreme dysfunction, and what that feels like, and then just again the way the community would treat them. Even in a community where a lot of that behavior is more commonplace because Israel's just totally living in sin, and here's a prophet trying to be the voice of righteousness, and here's this. So this is anger that comes from a very different place. It's not the anger through righteousness. It's an anger through heartbreak. and sadness and brokenness. And that's where this is coming out of. And God is using this to say, this is how I feel towards Israel right now. Because they're like a wife who's a prostitute living with me in my house. So Hosea married Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim. Then she conceived and gave birth to a son for him. Okay? What we think, there are different points of view with regards to, like, was she a prostitute from the start? Was she not from the start, but then on to a certain point in their marriage, she became a prostitute? Like, what does that look like? We don't know, but what I find the most compelling is, because it seems to intensify the emotion here, is just when he married her, she was fine. And that there was this, in the same way that when God established a relationship with Israel, things were fairly fine. And then things became not fine. And so in my view, it's one of those things where they had a good relationship at first, and then this happened, and that adds to the heartbreak, is that she wasn't this way originally.
And that I think makes sense looking at it from God's standpoint, because
Right.
God built his covenant with Israel knowing that it wasn't going to go well.
Yeah. Yep. So he married Gomer, and Gomer's kind of a hard name for us because very often in our culture, the name Gomer has certain connotations, and it just means certain things in our particular culture. So it can be something kind of a hard thing to talk about their relationship without snickering, and so as I was approaching this, you can just do what I did as I approached this passage, since I have a hard time calling her Gomer, and I just add an accent mark and call her Gomer. Hosea and Gomer. And that works just fine for me, so I'm going to roll with it. Within this class, you may refer to her as Gomer, and it'll be fine. Okay? Perfect. Problem solved. Okay?
You know, Nate, as you're talking about this, you're asking about the children and about, you know, how he felt, they felt, and my mind automatically, and I don't know why it goes this way, to think about her. And is the pressure of being a wife of a prophet leading her down a road?
Interesting.
Because a lot of times there's a lot of pressure when
Yeah.
I've got a girlfriend who is I've got a lot of the girlfriends who are a pastor's wife.
Sure.
And the pressure is just so extreme.
Oh, man.
Did it lead that? And God already knew it, but my mind automatically goes to her. Why? Why would she, if she
Sure.
had been promiscuous and then she turned to prostitution?
Yeah.
Is there that pressure that lays there? for her
Maybe.
As a wife.
We will see in the text some of her motivations, because the text gives some clues. We won't fully know, so that is a good, because possibly that played into it. But we will see some of her other motivations here a little bit later in the chapter. Then the Lord said to Hosea, she had one kid with him, name him Jezreel, because in a little while I will punish the dynasty of Jehu on account of the bloodshed in the valley of Jezreel, and I will put an end to the kingdom of Israel. And at that time I will destroy the military power of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. So name him this. Jezreel means God scatters. Okay? So naming him God scatters because of, basically, why did you name your son that? Because a little later Israel's going to get destroyed. And God's going to scatter all of you, which is what happens to Israel, is they get, as a people, they get scattered amongst all the other nations. They no longer live in Israel anymore when Assyria comes to town. So Assyria crushes Israel. She conceived again and gave birth to a daughter. Then the Lord said to him, name her Lo Ruhamah, which means no pity. Because I will no longer have pity on the nation of Israel, for I will certainly not forgive their guilt. So the daughter's name is No Pity. there is actually another, to understand this, Hebrew words can have the same meaning, but then like be said differently. This word actually, this name actually has a different meaning, very closely aligned, that I think you need to, like, in terms of how she would have been known. The other translation of this word is, she is not loved. It's an outrageous name for a girl, for anyone. But that is the way she would have been known. She is not loved. No pity.
Nate is, okay,
Mm-hmm.
when you read above, it talks about Jezreel,
Mm-hmm.
it says Gomer, she conceived and bore him a son. With the daughter, it doesn't say anything about that.
Mm-hmm.
Being that we know that she was prostitute and promiscuous,
Right.
is the daughter his?
Don't know.
I mean,
Adds to the ambiguity.
I don't either, and that's
Yeah.
what, because when we read scripture, we need to
Mhm.
read those certain highlights.
Yep.
And if we don't notice those things, we can lose some of the meaning behind certain things.
So there is this is disputed. Some scholars believe that these first three kids we're going to see were his, and then there's going to be children later that are not named that aren't. Some would say that it's a mixed bag with these three. We don't know, but even like in this society, there can certainly be question because we know what Gomer's doing.
Well, and God speaks things for specific reasons, and if He puts in there that one of them was born to him, but yet on the other one doesn't put it in there, a lot of times God's saying something specific to
Sure.
Yeah.
And I would say because of the way the text is worded, I would say there is definitely uncertainty. I don't think there's uncertainty as to the child's outcome. I think there is uncertainty, and that's precisely the point. Okay? So the meaning here, God had been very compassionate to Israel in the past. He had shown them compassion for a really long time. At this point, God cannot be compassionate anymore. Because of the way Israel's behaving, God is saying, you're being so unfaithful, so persistently, I can no longer be compassionate to you. But one day I will have pity, I added in the one day, but I will have pity on the nation of Judah. I will deliver them by the Lord their God. I will not deliver them by the warrior's bow, by sword, by military victory, by chariot horses, or by chariots. So, Judah, this is an Israel judgment. For Judah, there will be deliverance from Assyria. We can see that in 2 Kings, when Assyria is trying to menace Judah, and the Lord says he'll not enter the city, he's not even going to be able to attack it at all. He'll go back the way he came, he will not enter the city. I will shield the city and rescue it for the sake of my reputation, and because of my promise to David my servant. And that very night the Lord's messenger went out and killed 185,000 men in the Assyrian camp. Boom. Just decimated an army just by himself. When they got up early the next morning, there were all the corpses. So King Sennacherib of Assyria broke camp and went on his way. He went home and stayed in Nineveh. So that's what the Lord did when Assyria came and destroyed Israel. That is how Judah was protected. So that is a little look towards the future. When she had weaned no pity, she conceived again and gave birth to another son. Then the Lord said, name him not my people, Lo-Ammi, because you are not my people, and I am not your God. I don't even know you. And we, in the midst of marital discord, or not even marital, but like when a relationship between a husband and a wife is broken, it is not uncommon for the two of them to say, I don't even know you anymore. And that's what God is saying here to Israel. I don't even know you. I don't even know who you are. But you're not mine. You're not mine. So Jezreel, I'm going to scatter you. No pity. I'm not going to show you any compassion by rescuing you. I'm not going to, when you are in the face of your enemies in the past, I have shown compassion when you were being oppressed by an enemy. I'm not going to do that. And then not my people. Our relationship is done. And there will not be a relationship going forward in the rest of Scripture with Israel. You are not my people. Israel broke God's heart. And you can't understand Hosea if you're reading it through the lens of Amos. There's a place for that anger. But this is anger coming from a very different place. This is anger coming in the same way to watch the person you love cheat with lots of other people over a period of years, and the way in which that would just rip your heart out. That's the way God feels now. It's anger out of heartbreak. There's no more relationship. But, leaving this scripture at the end of it, however, in the future, that we don't even know yet, this hasn't happened, in the future, the number of the people of Israel will be like the sand of the sea, which can be neither measured nor numbered. Although it was said to them, you are not my people, it will be said to them, you are children of the living God. One day, it'll be said of them that. Then the people of Judah and the people of Israel will be gathered together again, because they're separated now. They will appoint for themselves one leader and will flourish in the land. Certainly the day of Jezreel will be great. So they'll appoint for themselves one leader, which we think in context is knowing what we know is probably Jesus. Okay? And one day, they will all come together around him. Now, has that happened? No, that does not. Israel does not recognize Jesus in that fashion. But one day, they will. And so, the Israel of this day is doomed. There will be no relationship. But in a future generation to come, God will redeem Israel, and they will gather together, and they will be so prominent that people will look at Israel and say, that is the nation of the Lord. Right now, people call Israel that incorrectly. But one day, it will be that, truly. It will be the nation of the Lord, because they will love the Lord that much. And then, you will call your brother my people. Because they called them not my people. But then I'm going to change their name. And they will be my people again. And you will call your sister pity. Names are just, I will change the names. And it will be pity, and I will show compassion again. So one day there will be a redemption. There's differences exist as to what this means. I don't say this to kind of make your minds run wild. But understand that in the Christian community, there's differences here. I think in some views, Israel is being referred to, and there are other traditions of Christianity where they think that we're talking about the church, because they would say the church kind of replaces Israel, and everywhere that you see Israel, those prophecies are meant for the church. I think, so which one's right, Nate? Well, what I will do is I kind of split through them a bit, and to me, when I'm going to try and divide between when there are things that are specifically Israel, it's probably referring to Israel. When it's referring to other peoples, then maybe we're referring to the whole church. And so I think I will take things on a case-by-case basis rather than kind of making a blanket. In this case, I believe that Israel is being referred to. But just so you know, there's not, as with many things in Christianity, there's not consensus. And then from here in this next little bit, these next few minutes, Hosea is going to be talking about his relationship with Gomer. And at the same time, God's going to be talking about his relationship with Israel. And so the same words are getting used, but they're going to have two different meanings. One is if Hosea is talking to a person, another one as if God is talking to a country. Okay? Hosea begins, plead earnestly with your mother. He's speaking to the children here. Plead earnestly with your mother, for she's not my wife, and I'm not her husband, so that she might put an end to her adulterous lifestyle and turn away from her sexually immoral behavior. I'm speaking to you, kids, because she's not even my wife. She's off with other men right now. She's not even here. She has decided she does not want to be my wife. So she's off elsewhere. The marital vows, they're not present here because she's left. She's gone. But you go plead with her. So there's two things going on here. One, Hosea is saying to you that the children need to go up to your mother. I've done it to death. You need to go up to your mother and say, what you're doing is wrong. You are not being the mother to us that we need right now. And at the same time, the Lord is testifying against Israel's conduct in a similar fashion. Okay? You're not in relationship with me. Okay? Otherwise, some harsh words, I will strip her naked, and I will expose her like she was when she was born. I will turn her land into a wilderness and make her country a parched land so that I might kill her with thirst. From Hosea's perspective, Gomer's exposed herself to all her lovers. She's been naked with all of her lovers that she's been with. Hosea's going to say, I'm going to be very open and public about what you've been doing with everybody. I'm going to make it very plain. I'm not going to hide, and I'm not going to cover for you. I'm not going to lie for you. When people ask where you are, I'm going to tell them. I'm going to expose you in that way. And she will thirst for children, but because of her promiscuity, she's not going to be able to have them. The Lord's going to give her barrenness as consequence. Okay? So she is going to desire more children, but she won't be able to have them. From God, I'm going to expose you to every other country, Israel, for your sins, and I'm going to make you desolate. I'll have no pity on her children. This was rough when I wrote it. It's rough now. Because they are children conceived in adultery. For the mother, their mother has committed adultery. She who conceived them has acted shamefully. For she said, I will seek out my lovers. They are the ones who give me my bread and my water, my wool, my flax, my olive oil, and my wine. Gomer's motivations. You know, living as with a prophet, I don't get any of the nice stuff. But you know, these other guys, they promise that if I sleep with them, they're going to give me all the goods. I'm going to get all the nice clothes and the special oils, and I'm going to get lots of wine. And that is part of her motivation for seeking out her lovers, because of the stuff they give her. And what he's saying is, for these children that you've had, I am not going to support them in such a way that they enable you, Gomer. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to, in this case, because of the way you're living, I'm not going to do anything so that you keep this up. I'm not going to make it easy for you. We're in the midst of a messy and broken relationship. And we're only just beginning. So this is hard. I think what I'll leave you with is, now you're getting a taste of what happens when we sin against the Lord. And I think in this case, what happens when we persistently sin, the sins that we decide we are not worried about, and we're just going to kind of keep on doing, and then how the Lord feels about that.
And the fact that it doesn't just impact us.
Yeah. So someone asked before I even started, the prophets asked, so, I mean, what did the prophets do to get their message across? And God is going to walk us through a family being ripped apart by sin so that we can learn from it and that we can understand his heart. And that's not going to be an easy thing. This isn't going to be easy as we walk through it, but it's necessary. Good rest of the day. Okay. I'll send you a link. Let me send you a link. I'll send you a link later for Facebook. Yeah. I'll send it to you.
Karen, will you be there?
Okay.
Quickly.